Welcome back to another episode of Coldstream Rod Shop. I'm Derek Fraser. We're continuing the work on the 32.5 window coupe. One of the things I've been messing around with the last couple episodes that I didn't mention, we got one of those Eastwood buffers, scalers. I'll show you over on the bench over there, but it's got kind of like an abrasive wheel. It's like a heavy Scotch-Brite or whatever. So I've been using that to kind of take most of the scale off the back of the body. Ultimately, we're going to have to do a light sandblast, but I wanted actually to minimize the amount of time I was sandblasting it before we put the epoxy primer on, which is kind of in the future. We're not at that stage yet, but I was just messing around trying to clean the metal up and actually just expose any other thin spots that I couldn't see. A few have come up, and I've basically seen a few places that I forgot I've got to repair, like this belt line here. I'm going to have to repair that or put new metal in or try and flatten it out some more. There was a massive amount of damage that was there that I had straightened out some but never finished. Around the front, like I said in the last episode, going to start working on the cowl band lip and then up around the windshield. This is the tool I was talking about. It's from Eastwood. Apparently there's some clones or whatever on now that work almost as well. I've seen a few people on YouTube do a couple, I guess, comparisons or whatever. This thing does do the trick. It does take the scale off. It does take the paint off. It kicks up a massive amount of dust in the air, so you better have your mask on and put a fan out in the window to suck some of the dust out. The whole shop is covered with dust right now, but it does the trick. But on old metal like that, it's not to the point where I think that I can go put primer onto it. I'm still going to have to go an extra layer or an extra level to basically, dig out some of the pit. It won't get into any pits or anything like that, so ultimately we're going to have to sandblast it. If it was something like this, like our 32 Roadster, where it's just got that little fine rust onto it, it cleans that off. Like, that's basically, I tried it on the back here. It cleaned all that little surface rust off, that little scale off. I wiped that down. I'll be ready to paint it. So like I said, we're going to keep on working on the 5-window coupe here. Cowl band lip will be first, and then I'll go and try and work around the windshield. Ultimately, the windshield area, once it's all fixed, I'll probably work on the hinges. Don't know if that'll be that episode or not, and get it ready to put one of these windshield frames in so that it's functioning for the owner. So watch along as we keep working on the 32 5-window coupe. So here is the repair to the cowl lip. I cut a section out and I welded a piece of metal in. Along the edges also, there was other pinholes here that it was basically pinholes. So I just basically welded it up, as you can see here. My intention right now is basically to grind that off, and hopefully there's no other thin areas next to it. If there is, then I may have to cut that out and actually put another piece of metal in, but I'm going to try it right now with these smaller sections, with these tiny pinholes. I know it doesn't look very pretty, but you dress the metal up, you weld build it up on the lowest setting, and then you dress it back down with a grinding wheel. If there's no other thin spots, then you're good. If there is a thin spot, then you got to cut it out and put another piece of metal in. So hopefully here in the next few minutes I will show you what this looks like all dressed out, and tell you how well it made out by welding the pinholes and then welding the metal patch in. So here is what it looks like after I put the rough grinding wheel onto it to dress the welds off. It's actually looking really good. I think I made the right decision to do a patch and then actually fill up some holes. There are a couple tiny little pinholes, which is normal after you grind it off. It's you're welding old metal to new metal, and you can get little imperfections in there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to weld up some of these little tiny holes. I don't know if we can see any close up here or not. lighting isn't the best. There's a couple little hot spots there too, which shows that there's a little bit of thin material. So I'm going to go weld those up and dress them up, and I think we're well on our way to having this fender, pardon me, not fender, cowl band lip repaired. So here is the finished cowl band lip, I guess if you call it. The patch is all welded in. I've got everything finished ground. Chased pinholes quite a few times because as soon as you touch it with a little flapper wheel, unfortunately it exposes other spots, other holes, or if you get a little heat to it, the really thin spots will turn blue. So I had to go back over and make sure all of those are gone, and then just cleaned it up. Had a little bit of distortion there on the top because of the heat, and dollied that out. But right now the cowl band lip is done, and I'm going to move on and start working on all kinds of little different places here around the windshield frame. You can see here that when I hit the flapper wheel, that it just blew apart. So there's some, and of course that bullet hole there that I mentioned in the previous episode. So I'm going to start working around the windshield frame and try and tidy some of this up and get some of the rust cleaned off. So follow along. There's a whole lot going on here around this post. I made the sheet metal repair here. Can insert some pictures of what it looked like before I put it in, but basically it's a piece of 18 gauge metal bent at 90 degrees, and I welded it along this line. That's the simple part. The difficult part was there's lots of pinholes along here, and here at the bottom, when I cut this in, there was a lot of lead I had to cut out, so I still have to make a little patch across the bottom. You can see over on that side how it should look, but this side was the worst, so I started with this side. There's a few other things going on here too. There were 4 sheet metal screws here, here, and here, and here. I had to basically cut out. I'm either going to weld them up and put the number 6 screws in, or I'm going to go see if a number 8 screw will fit in there fine. Up here there was 832 screws which had to be drilled out and tapped out, so they're out now. The top one I may have to put a nutsert into. We'll see what happens. The bottom one here, before I put this piece of sheet metal in, there's actually a D-nut. I don't know if you can see it there. There's a D-nut that actually went in behind. I had to weld that in behind there and then clean this up. At the same time, I took the opportunity of replacing these threaded nuts here for the windshield mechanism, I guess, if you want to call it that. These were completely rusted off, so basically cut them off, drilled it out, and then made up a new threaded stud here that's welded in place. So I'm going to keep on working along here. Still pinholes I'm filling as I go. Every time I touch it, there's a hole. But that's kind of the way this side of the car was. So we'll fill this hole up. I'll work along the top here, and I'm going to keep going along and do the same thing on the other side. Well, I didn't get as far as I wanted to in this episode, but we got quite a lot of things done, so a lot of small things. I was kind of hoping to get further along the top of the windshield frame, but we'll cover that next week. But what I was able to do was I finally made the repair to the sheet metal here. This bottom corner, I welded a piece in here. It's kind of intricate here, rather difficult to grind up. So one of the things I'd used was a little air tool here with these carbide burrs. So welded in place and then used that carbide burr to dress the welds up. And like I said, there's tons of little pinholes here. You make a grind and poof, there's a hole. Trying to save as much metal as we can, use what we have, make sure what we have is still good. The other thing was these 4 holes, these 4 screws here, which still don't know what they're for, but maybe somebody will tell me. When I took the screws out before, I realized they're oversized, so they had to be welded up and then drilled back out again. So those 4 are done. The two holes up top here, one is an 832, which I was able to salvage it and basically just re-tap it out. But the one above it, I had to drill it out and actually put in a nutsert. Many of you probably know what it is, but it's just like a little aluminum or steel insert that looks like that. You drill the oversized hole, then use this tool and basically squeeze it, and then that takes the place, and then there's the 832 thread inside there. More than likely going to have to do the same thing on the other side when I get to it. But that's it for this week. That's as far as we got. We'll carry on with the rest of the stuff next week. So please like, share, tag, and subscribe. Send me your comments. And everybody have a great week, and I'll see you next week.